Our next panel will share a brief history of microbusiness and review the current state and projected forecast for microlending and small business support in urban and rural communities. To lead this conversation, please give a warm WEDA welcome to the Wonder Woman of microenterprise, WWBIC's own Wendy Baumann. Wendy?
Great. Well, thank you very much. I am thrilled to share and be part of the Governor's Conference on Economic Development, sponsored and supported by WEDA. Wendy Baumann, President and CVO of the Wisconsin Women's Business Initiative Corporation, and I'm thrilled with this panel that's really going to look at the history and the rich past of micro businesses in our nation, and certainly specific right here in Wisconsin, as well as the state of the state and some policy work that we're advancing to support 88% of small businesses in the United States are micro businesses, and the world even became more aware of these important businesses when COVID hit last year. We're going to hear from some great individuals, all of whom I will call my friends, and who have been in this industry literally for decades. So the format, again, will be a brief reflection on the past and a little bit how micro businesses came to be and how this industry has grown and how important it is in our economy in urban and rural communities throughout this nation. And then we'll hear again, what are some policy initiatives to help support this on a national level as well as on a local level? And then we'll hear from the ground two wonderful individuals who have been running microbusiness organizations, again, really for decades that we'll weave through. We'll close out then with a quick round robin on what does the future look like? What does the rest of this year look like? Challenging. Well, we, as providers and supporting micro businesses, are the front line for economic development. How do we deal with that amidst the health pandemic and so many, again, unknown factors on timing? So we'll hear from everybody there too. My introductions will be so brief, and then I'll toss it off to our first speaker because you can read all about them and their bios in the conference material. It's also been a pleasure serving on the conference planning committee this year too. Connie Evans, Chief Visionary Officer for Association of Enterprise Opportunity. I've known Connie for 27 plus years. We have Ariana Parks with Rapoza and Associates. Again, such a strong supporter of SBA microlenders, the industry of microlending, as well as policy work with CDFIs. Robert Villareal, he's in the warmest climate here in California, and I brought you guests all outside of the state of Wisconsin to get some outside perspective to all of the good citizens in the jewel of the Midwest in Wisconsin. And then Agnes Noonan, who I've also known for 27, 28 some years, who runs WESST in Nevada, some organization quite similar really to WWBIC. So with all of them, especially for my girlfriends Connie and Agnes, who I've known for 27 some years, my line still remains, and we still look good. So now I'll shoot it over to Connie to begin. Thanks, Connie.
Oh, thank you, Wendy. It's a pleasure to be here. It's really such an honor to be with such great friends and great colleagues at the same time. And I'm excited that AEO is 30 years old. That is, I think, a huge accomplishment of any nonprofit these days. And not only are we 30 years old, but we are innovative and relevant, just like our members. So let me tell you a little bit more about the industry. AEO is the National Trade Association and Network for U.S. microfinance and microbusiness. We have over 1,700 members across the country who provide capital and business support services to underserved entrepreneurs. Now, let's back up with some of that terminology, because I know not all of you are as familiar with microfinance and microbusiness as we are. Microbusiness is defined typically as a business with fewer than 5 employees. However, our members do work with not only the sole proprietors, the people who have the business owners with jobs and employees, that sometimes go all the way up to at least 20 employees and maybe even more. Because even though 20 is outside of that 5, those businesses are still pretty micro and still kind of like don't have anywhere to really go. And so they come in our industry and they start in our industry as micro, and they're able with the right resources to grow and hire. Now, microfinance. I use the term microfinance rather than a microloan because they really are two different things. A microloan in this country is actually defined as a loan of $50,000 and below. However, again, AEO's focus is on microfinance that looks at what are the needs of business owners who have capital needs of $250,000 and below. But let's be clear, again, some of our members actually make loans up to $1 million or more to entrepreneurs that, again, cannot get access to capital elsewhere. A little bit more about our structure within the industry. We have organizations and programs that sometimes are standalone, like many of the ones here represented on this panel, but we also have micro business programs or microfinance programs that operate inside a CDC, operates inside a college or university. Also, as part of that structure, we have programs that provide not only capital, but they provide capital and business support services. They also, of course, in our industry, are organizations that are only lenders, and they focus only on getting the capital into the hands of business owners that are using that to grow their business and in their communities. We also have those organizations that only provide business services and are not actually lenders. When we think about and look across the industry, we really have grown. When AEO was started in 1991, it really started out of the movement of what women needed. Many of the organizations started as standalone women-focused organizations, and over the years that has grown and developed. AEO has been there for all of that period. When I think about the impact of AEO and its members over these 30 years, I think about impact in two different ways. One is looking at what our members in the industry have been able to do in terms of impacting small micro business owners in their communities. AEO and its members have provided over services to help more than 2 million businesses start and grow. So when we think about impact, just think about what that has, the triple effects, if you will, that has happened in communities where we've supported over 2 million of these small businesses. I also think about AEO's impact along with its members as being in the working to change the systemic barriers that many of our customers actually face. And that's where, again, AEO has had a very rich history. For example, many of you may have heard of the Microloan Program at the SBA, the Small Business Administration. AEO actually drafted that Microloan Program and promoted and was responsible for it actually becoming law. Another example of our ability to change that, it started as a pilot program, and then again, our advocating and providing more support for that also helped it to become a permanent program about 5 years later. That gives you just one indication of the impact of our advocacy. I have a long, long list I could go through that really does focus on that kind of impact. One other piece that I'll mention as we're talking about impact, even maybe two, because both experiences, I think, will give you a sense of who we serve out there in the marketplace. So before the Jobs Act, in 2012, 2015, I think it was, a microloan was actually defined by government as $30,000. It was AEO and its members' work that actually got that in the jobs bill to increase to $50,000. So we definitely have impact. We have impact in making sure that the appropriations across some of the administration offices that we care about mostly, like SBA, about Treasury and the USDA, a lot of those programs, AEO and its members advocate significantly to drive the amount of capital into programs that ultimately benefit the businesses that we serve. When I think about the businesses that the AEO industry and the microfinance industry serves, it's not just typical Main Street businesses. It's women owned. It's owned by, we actually probably serve more people who are in underserved communities, whether that is, I guess it's now called BIPOC communities, Black, Indigenous, Brown. I mean, that's where our customer base really is. And we are there across the state, rural and urban programs, which I think, again, makes our industry quite unique in how the depth and the breadth of who we serve. As I think more about the current needs of the industry, what I see primarily is reflected in AEO's work, because our whole job is to try to provide and meet the needs of our members and the customers they serve. So when I think about it in three ways that it's simple and quick, hopefully, in talking about the 3 I's. Our industry is one that needs innovation, we need infrastructure, and we need the infusion of funds and capital. So let me give you a couple quick examples of how AEO addresses that. Innovation, not only do we work to provide new solutions for problems that business owners are experiencing, such as we're working now on a new cash flow app, where, as we know, all of our businesses, at least most of our businesses, have real cash flow problems and liquidity issues. The research shows that, our research shows that. And so one of the things that we do the research to document the problem, and then we organize members in cohorts to actually help solve that problem and demonstrate new products around that. Another one that we're working on is about 3 different new underwriting tools. Just think about how that can change our industry and provide much more capital to businesses if they are able to actually get through underwriting that takes place across the country. So we're doing, again, we've done the research, and now we're actually testing 3 new potential tools that can help change how we think about risk and get that throughout the industry. Infrastructure, we try to build utilities, if you will, building solutions that anybody in the industry can plug and play. My Way to Credit is one of those, where it's a market referral system where banks, financial institutions can send their declines, and we get them out in the industry through CDFIs and others in our network who can actually make those loans. And then lastly, of course, is the infusion of funds. And I'll go back to appropriations. AEO has been partially instrumental in probably getting about $20 billion over the last just maybe seven to 10 years to capital and programs in the microfinance industry. Similarly, we've worked to help get private capital and to do things like we've sponsored a whole series for about 2 years working with foundations around the country to help them understand how Black business ownership works and why they should be making the case internally in the foundations to actually bring funding into the community. The AEO conference that happens every year, the national conference, is I'll use this word, is a good hunting ground for foundations. Foundations attend that conference looking for prospective grantees and then follow up with them once they've had a chance to meet them, hear them on panels, et cetera. So a number of activities and ways that we not only bring technology, we bring innovation and new products, we bring research, and we bring that critical access to capital, not just for the entrepreneur, but the capital, the working capital organizations need to do their work firmly. I'm going to close on that little history and look forward to talking with you further about my thoughts on the future. Wendy, I'll throw it back to you.
Okay, thank you, Connie. Just a couple quick things. You know, Connie is really an icon. I met Connie 27 years ago, actually this month. I've been at WWBIC for 27 years. And that very first week at WWBIC, Connie called me up. At the time, she was the founder and executive director / president of WESST, Women's Self-Employment Program in Chicago. And she said, you need to join AEO. I said, absolutely. And WWBIC has been a member of AEO ever since. In addition, I served on the board of AEO, and another one of my claims to fame is that during that time I was on the board, we actually hired Connie as our executive director for AEO. So another good move there. And again, I really appreciate you talking about the woman's aspect too, which is important because WWBIC really in 1987, one of the first micro business, organizations came out of the women's economic empowerment movement and came out of the microlending movement. Way before, if you will, Dr. Muhammad Yunus was on the scene with, Grameen Bank and microlending. So we came out of that. And from day one, WWBIC was dedicated to women and then specifically businesses owned by people of color, Black-owned businesses, Hispanic, Latinx, and definitely lower wealth individuals. We still at WWBIC call them pre-rich individuals. And in the last few years, we've added veterans on. And that's, again, very much the fabric of many micro business organizations nationwide. One real quick thing, Connie, before we move on. Again, we have economic development providers, city, county, state officials, utilities. Are those organizations appropriate to join AEO?
They certainly are. We have, again, around that 1,700 member base. It really does include local government programs, state programs, universities, practitioners, lenders, academics. It is a broad and wide spectrum of the ecosystem, right? Anyone who works to support entrepreneurs, low wealth in particular, small in particular, please come and join AEO. You can check us out on our website and all the information for joining is right there, or contact us at any time if you have questions. We welcome each and every one of you to become a member.
Good. I really think you get some pickup after this session. I really do. And I think it's important, the research information, the access, all of that. So thank you. So now we're going to move on to a little bit of the state of SBA microlenders, CDFIs, maybe a little bit on some of the policy work that we've done too. So Ariana Parks, we'll toss it off to you.
Thank you, Wendy. I appreciate you inviting me to participate in today's conference, and I am honored to be a part of this distinguished panel of experts, many of whom I work with on a regular basis. As Wendy said, my name is Ariana Parks. I am the Director of Policy and Public Affairs for Rapoza Associates, which is a public interest government relations firm in DC. Our firm in particular specializes in community and economic development policy. And as a part of that work, we manage the CDFI Coalition and the Friends of the SBA Microloan Program. The Friends and the CDFI Coalition are groups established to advocate for federal resources and policies related to the CDFI fund programs at the U.S. Treasury and the U.S. Small Business Administration's Microloan Program. We also manage the New Markets Tax Credit Coalition and the National Rural Housing Coalition, which some of you might also be familiar with. So I know that this has been a part of the conversation in other panels throughout the day. We all know that this pandemic has hit small and micro businesses hard, but this is particularly true for minority and women-owned businesses. A report by the Stanford Institute on Economic Policy and Research found that in the midst of the early days of the COVID-19 crisis, African-American businesses were hit especially hard, experiencing a 41% drop. Latino business owners fell by 32%, and Asian business owners dropped by 26%. Immigrant business owners also experienced substantial losses of 36%, and female-owned businesses were disproportionately hit by 25%. Well, business closures and loss is damaging for almost any entrepreneur. This might be particularly so for the types of businesses and the people served by CDFIs and SBA microloan intermediaries. A 2018 SBA Office of Advocacy report found that 73% of Black small business owners rely on their own funds to finance their businesses, compared to 43% of white small business owners, which I think is an important piece of the equation and discussion, the conversation that we're here to have today. So there are a number of federal resources for micro businesses, which Connie alluded to as well, that are targeted to serve underserved entrepreneurs and areas. A few I think would be of interest to our discussion today are the Microloan Program, which provides loans up to $50,000 for minority, women, veteran, and low-income entrepreneurs, as well as the CDFI fund programs at Treasury. These are loans, development, financial services targeted to low-income people and low-income communities. That can be small businesses, but it can also be other types of project financing that may be of interest to the audience, including housing, infrastructure, and that's just to name a few. There's also the Rural Micro Entrepreneur Assistance Program at USDA called RMAP. Loan that similarly to the Microloan Program provides loans up to $50,000 that's targeted to rural areas outside of a city or a town with a population of fewer than 50,000 residents. And there are also a number of new or added resources that have been included in COVID relief legislation passed over the last several months, including the December bill. So the Paycheck Protection Program, or PPP, which I'm sure you have all heard much about, is one of those resources that has been to a lot of small businesses, but also a bit tricky to access for minority business owners, as well as small and micro businesses. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a bit. There's also the Small Business Debt Relief Program. So that was authorized and has been extended and expanded in recent legislation. That provides principal and interest payments for a certain period of time. There are some issues that we're working with Congress on currently concerning the funding for that. But it's a great opportunity for businesses that might be cash strapped at the moment and need some assistance. And then probably the most important is the expansion of funds for CDFIs and the Microloan Program. There has been a significant amount of funding provided for CDFIs and the Microloan Program in this most recent legislation, including about $3 billion in grants for CDFIs and $57 million for the Microloan Program, which, compared to current and annual appropriations, represents a significant increase. So I'll turn back to the Microloan Program for a second. As I mentioned, the Microloan Program provides loans to minority, women, veteran, and low-income entrepreneurs. In Wisconsin, there are 5 microloan intermediaries, including WWBIC. And they have had a great impact, not just in Wisconsin, but nationally. So to put the national impact in perspective, in fiscal year 2019, the average microloan was less than $15,000. So you can see that it's going to very small businesses. In addition, of the 5,533 loans made that year, 62% went to entrepreneurs, and 48% of those borrowers 62% were minority entrepreneurs, and 48% of the borrowers were women. So while accessing financing is clearly important and a necessary way to not only start up a business, but also, to expand a business, the key aspect, I think, of the Microloan Program is the technical assistance that is provided by intermediaries like Robert and Wendy. They provide a variety of guidance and expertise for borrowers that they might have a good idea, for example, but they may not know how to navigate all of the financial or legal or even marketing aspects of business ownership. So with that in mind, I think that the Microloan Program plays a very important program in not only keeping businesses running, but jumpstarting. But there's also CDFIs. So I mentioned PPP. During the pandemic, CDFIs played a very important role in PPP lending. At the beginning, CDFIs were not included as a part of the CDFI coalition. We lobbied hard to get a set aside for CDFIs to do that lending and, to serve underserved communities, the business owners that weren't being served by traditional financial mainstream institutions. So in Wisconsin, through August 2020, there were $144 million in PPP loans out of $1.4 billion total, which was from CDFIs. and that retained 25,736 jobs. 28% of those loans went to women-owned businesses compared to 21% for non-CDFI lenders. 11% were minority-owned businesses compared to 8% for non-CDFI lenders. And 6.4% were to nonprofits compared to 4.3% for non-CDFI lenders. So, and I'll note that that it includes PPP lenders like Wendy's group, who are headquartered in Wisconsin, but there were also a number of CDFIs from outside of the state who made business loans to Wisconsin businesses. So, as I mentioned, CDFIs provide a variety of lending and financial services to underserved communities and people, both in rural areas and urban areas in Wisconsin and nationwide. In Wisconsin, there are 22 CDFIs that are headquartered, and they do a lot of work in the state. So according to CDFI transaction level reporting from the Treasury Department, in fiscal year 2017, CDFI activity included 686 originations totaling $115.4 million to businesses in the state. And I will say that was with a funding, an annual appropriation funding level of about $250 million. And what I mentioned was in this most recent Consolidated Appropriations Act, there is $3 billion in addition to an increase of the annual appropriation to $270 million that's going to be available and hopefully out to CDFIs and getting into communities here in the coming months. So it's a really good time to partner with CDFIs. Right. There are a lot of resources out there for businesses and communities that have been left outside the economic mainstream, but I know it can sometimes be confusing. So that's where folks like my fellow panelists come into play. And I think my other colleagues here are going to talk to you a little bit more about what they do and maybe give you some ideas for those partnerships.
Thank you very much, Ariana. Appreciate it. And appreciate hearing how important policy work is in this at a federal level, but also at a local, state, and definitely a local level. I have refused to call it PPP. I call it triple P. But I do know that we've done hundreds of them at WWBIC, and the importance of them and the significant numbers, as you mentioned, of working with minority-owned businesses and women-owned businesses and lower wealth. And we did many very little triple P, as opposed to the banks that were doing a lot of the larger ones. They would have fallen through the cracks if not for CDFIs in this nation. And it's the lucky businesses, micro businesses in this nation that are attached to a CDFI or to an SBA microlender. So thank you. So rubber meets the road. We want to hear from Agnes and Robert. We're moving along quickly in our time. So Agnes Noonan of WESST, can you share some real life stories, what you're doing there, how this all works?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Great to be here. Thanks for the invitation. My last memory of Wisconsin is buying cheese in downtown, which was great. WESST is the Women's Economic Self-Sufficiency Team. We were founded in 1989 with a mission of serving women, people of color, and low-wealth New Mexicans who wanted to start and grow their own business. I am in New Mexico. Our primary services are really around consulting, one-on-one consulting, training, access to capital, and business incubation. Like WWBIC, we are a part of the Women's Business Center network. We operate 6 women's business centers in New Mexico. We're also a CDFI and an SBA microlender. In our 30 years of serving people in New Mexico, we've served about 45,000 New Mexicans who've started over 2,800 jobs, 2,800 startups, and they've created about 5,700 new jobs. And we've done that to a clientele that is 65% female, 65% people of color, and 60% low wealth New Mexicans. Just quickly about New Mexico, we have all kinds of challenges here. We're the 5th largest state in terms of land mass, but only 2.1 million people. Outside of Albuquerque, which is where about a third of the population lives, the state is obviously mostly rural. In the 1990s, New Mexico became the first minority-majority state in the United States. Today, 68% of all New Mexicans are people of color. We've also we struggle with things like very high poverty rates. We tend to be in the top 2 or 3 states every year of states that have the highest poverty rate. But the good news is that micro business in New Mexico is big business. Approximately 53% of all businesses in New Mexico have fewer than 5 employees. And that's not counting Schedule C and solopreneurs. I know we're running out short of time and we want to get to that future section. So I'm just going to hit on a couple of challenges that we have seen historically, and these only get exacerbated if you're working in rural areas. And I make these remarks as it relates to micro entrepreneurs. What have we seen over the years? One of the biggest challenges is just a very low level of business and financial knowledge. Probably over half of the people we serve may not even have a high school degree. So we, apply resources to this area of business and financial education ongoingly, both at the personal level, certainly at the business level. Another major challenge is limited access to markets. I think that's probably true all over rural America. And that problem certainly gets exacerbated when you're in a big rural state and you simply have large parts of your state that are just not connected. Even if you wanted to have an online business in many parts of the state, in particular in New Mexico, the Navajo Nation, where a large percentage of the nation simply does not have access to the internet. So that continues to be a huge issue. And then third, that I would mention are language barriers. 10% of our population are immigrants, and 35% of households in New Mexico speak Spanish at home. So as a micro enterprise organization, we worked really hard over the years building our own capacity to deliver services in both English and Spanish, which I think is very critical. So I'm going to stop there, Wendy. I know we're needing to move along.
Good, thank you. And I don't know what I was thinking. I think I was planning on going gambling in Las Vegas. That's why I said Nevada. What the heck is that? I know you're from New Mexico. I'm cracking up here. So thank you, Agnes. And we do want to hear a little bit more of your future piece. But I think the part that is maybe, again, a little repartee here, some might say, wow, immigrants, lower educational, lower wealth individuals. Tell us about your success with such individuals around microbusiness. You're one of the most successful organizations in the nation. Just tell us about.
Well, I would just say one thing is we are constantly trying to understand and learn from our clients about what they need. And as we have gotten older as an organization, and I'll mention a couple of examples in the future section, but we certainly are always wanting to identify what do our clients need. Secondly, immigrants. We've also worked with political refugees in New Mexico. Are among the hardest working entrepreneurs you'll find anywhere in the country. So if provided the right set of resources, which usually revolve around education and capital, it's just incredible to watch what they can do with their businesses.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. So now we'll move on, last but not least, to Robert Villareal in California. Warmest temperature, almost 60. So go ahead, Robert.
Great. Thank you so much, Wendy. I appreciate the invitation. And it's only 59 degrees here. That's why I'm wearing a coat. My name is Robert Villareal, and I'm with CDC Small Business Finance. I'm headquartered here in California, and I'm sitting in my home in San Diego. So I appreciate the invitation and the opportunity to speak with the good economic development folks in Wisconsin. So I'll tell you a little bit about who we are, what we've been doing, and some tips of how you could work with great organizations like Wendy's and others in the state of Wisconsin as economic development professionals. So CDC Small Business Finance is a 43-year-old nonprofit. We primarily focus on SBA products, 3 key products: the SBA microloan, which you've heard Agnes and Ayrianne talk about, and AEO talk about, and Connie. A program that also WWBIC deploys is called the Community Advantage Program. 10 years ago, exactly February of 2011, we were allowed to play in this game and deliver a 7A loan program, which we never had been able to as mission-oriented lenders, and provide 7A loans up to $250,000. And guess what? We get a guarantee when we make that loan of up to 85%, and then we can even sell that guarantee piece in the secondary market. People will buy that, and then we can recapitalize and then lend those funds again. So it really was a game changer for a lot of us in the industry. And then we do a lot of SBA commercial real estate lending through a program called the 504. All told, in our 40-year plus history, we've done nearly $19 billion in lending to about 13,000 small businesses. What's really been occupying us over the last year, like many individuals, has been the triple P. In round 1, we did over 4,000 triple P loans for $184 million. I think what we're most proud of is 75%, over 3,000 of those 4,000 loans were loans 50,000 and under, really hitting those small entrepreneurs that really needed those funds. And what differentiates organizations like ours and Wendy's and Agnes's is the way we approach it. Our approach in that was in a very collaborative approach. We worked with a number of national organizations who referred their borrowers to us. I think we did 4 or 5 loans in the state of Wisconsin. And one of our more interesting collaboratives was with Sean Combs Enterprises. Sean Combs, also formerly known as P. Diddy. He created a website called Our Fair Share. And he created that to attract entrepreneurs of color, particularly Black and brown entrepreneurs. And through that relationship, we funded 230 PPP loans for $3.5 million. 70% of those individuals were Black-owned entrepreneurs. So that's how CDFIs, mission-based organizations, are really different than your traditional financial institution. In regards to the SBA Microloan Program, which we've talked about, we've been a lender in that for 20 years, and we've done about 400 loans under that program for $14 million. So look at that contrast. 20 years, we've done 400 SBA microloans, and in 2.5 months last year under the triple P, we did over 3,000. So it's been very crazy for us in the CDFI world and trying to scale up and reach the entrepreneurs, particularly the entrepreneurs of color. So a couple of things I want to leave you with is, you as economic development professionals, what can you do to be supportive of the great work that we're doing and that Wendy does, particularly in your state and the other CDFIs that Ariane mentioned that are in Wisconsin? Be supportive. One is be supportive of the advocacy efforts that we're doing. Connie mentioned how important that is. A good 30 to 50% of my time is spent on advocacy and making sure the changes that Connie talked about are done. In fact, Connie and I, a couple of years ago, had the opportunity to both together on the same panel testify in front of the Senate Small Business Committee, both on microlending and on the Community Advantage, as we try to make that a more permanent program. So support our advocacy efforts. Also, if you are at a public official at the state or a local level, we need, I think Connie called it infusion of capital. If WWBIC goes and borrows money from the government, the SBA, she needs a 15% loan loss reserve. So if you have funds available to help support, and she can leverage those funds, right? So if she gets $100,000, you put in $15,000, she's going to lend that $100,000 at least 2 to 3, if not 4 times in that 10-year history, in that 10-year term that she has with that. So if you can be supportive with your funds in that, and then also look to partner with us. Here in California, we've partnered with a number of cities to manage their loan funds. Cities wanted to do loan funds. We advised them that they should not be lenders of record. That's not what their strength is. But an organization like Wendy's can do that. That is their strength. So partner with them. And then be creative with the dollars that you do have. In California, obviously, you know, we have, we're a larger state. We have some great resources, but the state stood up a $500 million grant program to support the 4 million small businesses here in California. And what they did was they partnered with us CDFIs, as mission-based lenders across the country, to get the word out, to help them deploy that. And guess what? We had input about how they made the decisions of who got those loans. And their priority was to entrepreneurs of color and those that were low wealth and in low wealth communities. So work with us as an industry, and we can partner together to really reach those individuals that need these funds, and to really bridge that racial wealth gap and bring wealth to the communities who've been underserved and undervalued and overlooked for the last decades, if not centuries. So with that, Wendy, I will stop and hand it back to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Robert. And I appreciate that last point specifically about municipalities and counties and doing that work of microlending. And many have met with great success in partnering. A couple examples we can share at WWBIC has been the City of Madison. We really lead their microloan program. So in essence, we're lending on behalf of the City of Madison, the same with the City of Kenosha. And then in this last year, I often would say that, you know, grants and business don't mix. Well, over this last year, grants and business do mix. And we've seen it from Triple P on a federal level, EIDL, to local block grant offices, counties and municipalities turning again to organizations like WWBIC and providing direct grant pass-throughs to businesses and entrepreneurs within their geographic area that are low and moderate income, that need that support and the expertise of the CDFI, that city or that municipality does not have the expertise in providing, and that's fine. So turning again to CDFIs and microlenders is huge, as well as forgivable loans. We've done millions of dollars in the forgivable loans. So I know in this next CARES Act, that's a possibility, again, nationwide, but certainly in the state of Wisconsin. So we've talked about decades of rich history of micro business, specifically from Connie. We've gotten a sense of the state of what's happening from a policy perspective and on the ground through Agnes in New Mexico and Robert in California. But what does the future look like? So let's go around and talk about that. Connie?
Interesting. I mean, I find it such a strange question nowadays to ask about the future when so much is still uncertain, which is what our businesses deal with every day, which is the uncertainty of, you know, the economy, their businesses, et cetera. But yet they continue to be resilient, which is amazing. I think from our vantage point, I think of the future maybe in three specific ways. Of course, it's still the need for strong and stronger advocacy on behalf of the business owners that we serve. So much of policy work on the Hill or on the regulatory side inside the administration is just business, right? And what we've come to know for sure, that you just can't program for businesses and think it can cover all businesses. The needs of micro businesses are really unique. And then you go to veterans and immigrants and refugees and all the other groups that we've heard, and it's another subsector. So we really need to pay attention to policy and continue to advocate for policies and programs that work for the businesses that we care about and work with, which are very small. I think it's going to continue to be an ongoing need for innovation. We have businesses that will have to go on, we have business owners, entrepreneurs who will have to restart. What do they need? I'm not sure that we actually have currently the loan products available and the systems in place to really work quickly to help a business restart. It's not quite a startup. It's not quite an existing business. I think it's something unique there that we'll be able to, in our industry, continue to innovate to be able to help and serve those folks. I want to talk lastly about partnership. I think, as you've heard many of the panelists mention in terms of how they partner and the importance of partners, I think that's going to continue. And I want to talk about it in two ways. The business owner is going to need to partner. And when I talk about partnership on the business owner side, I want to reference something that Agnes said, which was about education and capital. What we know business owners need is that kind of education, the capacity building for their own knowledge, their own confidence, matched with capital. Capital alone typically does not work as well as the two combined. And so we need to talk about that kind of partnership for our business owners. AEO's research shows that when business owners have access to capital and the trusted guidance from members, their revenues grew 30 percentage points higher than those who did not. So it's an important partnership. The last one in terms of partnership is looking at where we get capital and working with corporations. AEO in the last probably 6 months, maybe a little bit longer, has directed itself, on its own or facilitated over $300 million in grants to Black-owned businesses. $300 million in small size, we're talking like $10,000 the average grant. That came through our corporate partners. And so we need to make sure that those partnerships continue to be invested in our industry some kind of way. And I think we actually will need grants for these businesses going forward. I think as we talk about businesses being essential, we need to think about how do we really move capital to these businesses in grants and in creative loan products. So that's my sense of the future. I think we still have a lot of work to do, a lot of things that our industry can do to help keep these businesses resilient.
Good. Thank you, Connie. And I just fully agree. I think our industry clearly sees, both the House and the Senate, as we go with policy work, clearly see that it's coupling that quality business and financial education programming or training, if you will, with access to fair and responsible capital, that you need the two. Renting of money does not work in and of itself, especially with the good individuals that we're working with. So thank you for that point. I think
Wendy,
it's really important.
Let me put a plug in also for the coalition, page 30 coalition. For those in the audience who may not have all of the capacity really to go out and do their own advocacy, I would invite you to check out page 30 coalition. It's an initiative that AEO helped to found that is working to really focus policymakers on the kinds of needs that we're talking about in our industry. page30coalition.org. Thank you.
Great. No, thank you, Connie. Appreciate it. Ariana, the future.
So the future, as Connie mentioned, is a little bit of an interesting subject these days, especially in the work that I do, which is lobbying Congress on behalf of community development organizations. So I will start off by mentioning that the CDFI Coalition is having its annual CDFI Institute on March 9th. You can find out more about that on our website at www.cdfi.org and go to the events page. We have a really great lineup. We've got Chairman Cardin from the Senate Small Business Committee, who will be talking as a keynote, and we'll be talking about resources, all of those new resources that I mentioned to CDFIs and small business owners. We've got a number of federal agency speakers coming to talk. We've got CDFI fund staff who will be speaking about that $3 billion that I mentioned that will be being rolled out in the next several months. So I think there's a lot of information to be had. What can you do and why is it important, I guess? So when I say that I'm a lobbyist, a lot of people, my family, like, what does that mean? Do you give people money? What, you twist people's arms? And I'm like, no. I am a storyteller. And so I think that what makes my work easy is by having our CDFIs and our microlenders share what they're seeing out in the field, as well as why resources are needed. And in this pandemic, that has been particularly necessary. So say with the natural disasters in California and that hit in the tornadoes in Tennessee and the hurricanes, I think there's a lot of information that needs to be shared with Congress. They're here in DC, they have staff, they're at home, but they want to know, they need to know. And so sharing that information and being a part of the advocacy efforts is really key to ensuring that those resources are available, to Wendy and Agnes and Robert, so that they can help the businesses in your communities. And I know that all of you are focused on what can you do for your state and local economies. The House Budget Resolution and Reconciliation is in the works right now, and there's actually a significant amount of funding that's going to be made available to small businesses. Now, there are some tricky things that are coming to be known. Legislation was put together to try to get it out to the communities quickly. The Small Business Debt Relief Program that I mentioned, there's not enough funding for it. So trying to work with Congress to ensure that there's enough funding so that we can continue getting those principal and interest payments, many of which were promised to businesses out there and that are essential to our minority businesses who have seen a disproportionate impact in closures that I mentioned earlier. We need your help. So I think helping share those stories, getting involved with groups like AEO, the CDFI Coalition, the Friends of the SBA Microloan Program. We are always looking for more voices to talk about what's happening in communities and the important work that you are seeing your CDFI and microloan intermediaries play when it comes to your businesses. So not just about saving them now, let's talk about the future. We want more new businesses. We want things to start up and get running. And so we're going to need a lot of resources to make sure that that happens, and good policy.
Good. Thank you. Yeah, not only about being resilient and making it through it, but really about being self-sufficient ultimately, and about growing. And this entire industry is about positively impacting lives on an economic basis. And it is that storytelling that truly gets through to individuals at hand, to our neighbors when we talk about the work we do, and to our families. So I appreciate that too. So Agnes, Robert, the future. Agnes, you want to start from Ohio, right, Agnes? Okay, New Mexico.
Sure.
Go, Agnes.
New Mexico. I think if the events of the past year showed us anything, obviously the disparities that exist for Americans across this country, particularly for people of color and diverse entrepreneurs. I do think for those of us working in this space of delivering entrepreneurial development services, the future is all about, we've got to think about, and Connie used the word innovation, but it really does get at not thinking in a different way and acting in a different way. At the top for me is being proactive, not reactive. Reactive is schedule a workshop, advertise it, and hope people show up. Proactive is, if I really want to serve diverse entrepreneurs, then I've got to form some relationships and keep working at them with other organizations that are also serving that market, and maybe in different ways. One of the things that the events of the past year caused us to do as we looked at our own loan fund, what else can we do? Particularly taking into account the wealth disparities that exist. Thank you very much, Connie and AEO. You all do such great research, and we actually used a lot of that research to develop something we call the Hope Fund. We just launched it, helping open opportunities for everyone. It's a little out there because we're going to extend 0 interest loans, no fees, low initial payments to correspond with the business cash flow, and borrowers will have the opportunity to have up to 10% of the principal forgiven on an annual basis if they carry on an ongoing relationship with WESST. And a second project that I think also gets at this notion of being proactive, it was initially funded by the Kauffman Foundation. It's called the Money Learning Lab, which is basically a place-based mobile classroom pop-up classroom where we can go into neighborhoods, communities where businesses are located, where they feel comfortable, and help them address the financial challenges in their business. One of the unique things about this was that it was designed using a human-centered design approach, which means you're involving the very people you want to serve in coming up with the solutions. So I think top-down has gone away, and it's all going to be about bottom-up going forward.
Thank you. Like that. And I love the Hope Fund. WWBIC for a long time has had an opportunity fund, and those are important words. So Robert, bring us home in less than 5 minutes.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So my one word is transformation. We hear the word a lot, resiliency. Everybody's talked about recovery, and resiliency. We use the word transformation. We think we need to transform the way capital is delivered. It hasn't worked. We've seen that. So it ties a lot with what Connie said. One of it is innovation with technology. We need to be better at what we do as an industry. Because the spotlight is on us. When the CEO of Goldman Sachs on the CBS Morning News on Sunday mentions the word CDFI, wow, right? So now all eyes are upon us. Hopefully more funding will be upon us, but we can't do it alone. So we need to work with our colleagues that are on this webinar in terms of transforming the way capital is delivered to communities of color. So that's what we're going to be working on. I think that's what, as an industry, we need to work on. And how do we use technology to do that? People want to apply for a loan on their phone. They want to do it quick, and they want a response within minutes, right? And now they did PPP, which worked that way for us CDFIs. So how do we adapt, and how do we get better at doing that? So how do we deliver capital better? But then I'm going to flip that back to our funders, whether they be public entities that are on this or private entities like the banks. They need to know that when we borrow capital or use their capital, we have an end user. That end user is a small business. That end user is a Black-owned small business somewhere, a woman, a veteran-owned business. We have to work with them and build products and programs that are suitable for them. Instead, as an industry, we've always built products that are suitable for our funder, the banks or whoever it is, the government agency. So we need to turn that on its head, again, the word transformation, and keep that end user, particularly that entrepreneur, that underserved, undervalued entrepreneur, and build products that are best for them. So again, that's about the transformation. And then on terms of the small business, what we've been working on, we did 8,000 hours of one-on-one technical assistance or business advising last year as an organization, is helping small businesses pivot. We've all heard that word, but that's what we did a lot. And how do we continue to be supportive of our small businesses to help them navigate everything that's going on in California? We were literally shut down for about 50 days, right? For small restaurants, it was takeout only. We just opened up about 10 days ago where they could at least do outdoor seating. So how do we help them go and move back and forth and to adapt? So that's so transformation and being adaptable are words that are part of us for 2021.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Robert. And also note that, Robert, you are a board member of Opportunity Finance Network, which is the leading organization of CDFIs in our nation, too. So thank you for serving in that role, too.
Sure.
So thank you, Connie Evans. Thank you, Ariana Parks. Thank you, Agnes Noonan from New Mexico, and Robert Villareal. Truly, truly appreciate your voice. I thank you for all of the great work you've done, and more so, thank you in advance for this year ahead specifically and years ahead in leading the industry for microbusiness. I also thank WEDA for noting, prioritizing, and prizing the importance of microbusiness and giving us this main session at this conference this year. Thank you all. Have a great rest of the day. Get ready for shoveling Wisconsinites. Bye.
Thank you.